Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be talking about James Gunn and the DC Universe. And to start off, I have to give you a little bit of context. Growing up, I read a lot of comics. I mean a lot of comics. And I have to say, I'm really a DC person. I read a lot of Marvel as well, but DC was really my thing. I mean, let's face it, DC has Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, all these iconic characters. And when it comes to DC movies, I'm really rooting for them to succeed. And my love of DC, I think, really stems from that first Superman movie that came out in 1978. I was too young to see it at the cinema at the time, but I remember seeing it on television when I was a kid, and I just absolutely loved it. It made me a lifelong fan of Superman. When it comes to DC and Warner Brothers, who own DC Comics, they were a bit hit and miss because they tended to focus more on Batman and Superman to the detriment of all the other characters. It seems like they just didn't know how to do them because Batman and Superman are the main characters of DC. But they really kicked up gear in the mid-2000s with the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. They were just fantastic. It's one of the greatest trilogies of all time. I think a serious argument could be made that the Dark Knight trilogy is one of the greatest trilogies of all time, if not the greatest trilogy of all time. But that's besides the point. Then moving on to the Snyderverse era, where we had Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, Justice League and all them. I was really down for that more grounded, gritty, edgy superhero universe because it was a nice counterpoint to what Marvel was doing. I mean, Marvel was all bright and shiny, more, I won't say kiddie friendly, but it was definitely more youth orientated. And that's fine. I mean, Marvel was, at least for the first 3 phases, was very entertaining. And I really enjoyed it. But again, like I said, I'm more of a DC guy. And I was really in for the Snyderverse. I mean, I loved Man of Steel, I loved Batman v Superman, and particularly the director's cuts of those movies. And I would have to say that Zack Snyder's Justice League is probably the greatest comic book movie of all time. I know some people disagree with me on that, but that's how I feel. When it comes to box office, they were facing dwindling returns. And I really don't blame Zack Snyder and his creative team and the directors involved because it's Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, who owns the properties of DC, and I'm not the first person to say this, they are the dumbest company in the world. Imagine owning Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and all these fantastic characters, and you keep messing them up. They just don't know what they have. It's like when Marvel were really taking off in the late 2000s with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Warner Brothers really wanted to jump on the bandwagon and create their own cinematic universe. And they did rush things along. I've seen so much criticism of the Snyderverse movies that they moved too fast into the team-up movies, to which I disagree. I mean, but that's another story entirely. But moving right along, the DC Extended Universe, as it came to be called, despite a few hits here and there like Aquaman, it's still hard to believe that Aquaman is the movie that made $1 billion out of all those DC Extended Universe movies. Who could have guessed that Aquaman would have made $1 billion, but a movie starring Batman and Superman would not? That's still crazy. So Warner Brothers got James Gunn on board to restart the DC Universe from scratch. Yeah, right. And hopefully make it a more palatable DC Universe for younger people. Now, on one hand, I can understand why they would do this because over the years, DC has been really fractured as a company, as a universe, unlike Marvel, where everything's connected, like movies and television. DC was more splintered because we had the film universe and we had the TV universe, which seemed to be separate. They were not one consistent cinematic universe. And James Gunn's mission statement was basically to connect everything: movies, television, video games. So he's essentially the Kevin Feige of the DC universe now. He said he had this 10-year plan. More on that in a minute. But things have changed along the way. Regardless of what I think of James Gunn as a person, James Gunn is, he cannot be denied, a talented individual. I enjoyed his Guardians of the Galaxy movies because they were fun, quirky ensemble movies. And that seems to be his niche. As a comic book geek, I have to say I never even heard of Guardians of the Galaxy before the movie came out. But it's amazing that James Gunn was able to take a property that was so relatively unknown, or completely unknown to most people, and turn it into such a blockbuster franchise. Whatever you can say about the movies, they were very, very popular and they were very, very successful. And you have to give him full credit for that. Now, for a while there, James Gunn was let go because of certain tweets that he made. You can look that up yourself. So temporarily he was fired from Marvel and he went over to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers just snatched him up and said, hey, do you want to make a Suicide Squad movie? And he made that for them. And I have to say, I enjoyed that too. It's much better than the first Suicide Squad movie, in my opinion, because again, it fell into his niche. He seems to specialize in quirky ensemble characters, and I really enjoyed it, even though it really didn't fit in with the tone of the overall Snyderverse. Now here's where the problems start. He was appointed head of DC Studios, and his first job was to bring Superman back to the big screen, to make his version of Superman. Now I've said this in other videos before, but when I heard about this, I thought this was a terrible, terrible idea. It's fine for James Gunn to make quirky ensemble movies, because again, as I said, that's his niche, that's what he's good at. Irreverent humor, kind of musical montages, comedies. But this is Superman we're talking about. James Gunn doing Superman never felt right to me, because it's Superman. Go back to the 1978 film. Certainly, the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve does have its moments of humor and even camp. But director Richard Donner, and especially Christopher Reeve, approached the material with complete and utter sincerity. Despite its bright tone, I also absolutely love Zack Snyder's take on the character. I really enjoyed the rough, gritty, down-to-earth realism of Man of Steel. Now you can say that both movies are like chalk and cheese, they're both very different, but they treated the main character of Superman with respect. But when I heard James Gunn was going to be directing Superman, I said, no, this is just going to be Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman in it. And I had to say, and this isn't going to be a belated Superman 2025 review, it was everything that I feared it would be. It was just too over the top, too full of irreverent humor, and it was just too busy, had too many characters in it, and Superman felt like a supporting character in his own movie. Not only was he a supporting character in his own movie, but he was treated with such disrespect. He was thrown around, he was tortured, he was beaten up, he was embarrassed. He played second fiddle to the Justice Gang and all these other characters. And it got to the point where, and this is not the main actor David Corenswet's fault, he was good Superman. It's just the material he had to work with was just terrible. It got to the point where he was tortured and thrown around and beaten up so much, I felt I could have beaten him up. There's a few moments in there where he came across as very superheroic and very iconic, but overall, the new Superman movie was a terrible, terrible mess. It was just too concerned with setting up a universe, a movie with Superman in it. That's exactly what it is. It was just a movie with Superman in it, but it was really about all these other characters. So yeah, I hated it. It's the worst Superman movie ever made. I would rather watch Superman 4: The Quest for Peace 10 times over than watch the new Superman movie again. And don't even get me started on how they changed the characterization of Superman's biological parents. And already James Gunn, as I expected, is not filling me with confidence of his new DC universe going forward. And there seems to be a lot of hope when it comes to Superman's box office, because it did well domestically, but it did not fare that well internationally. And actually, when you look at the box office results, this movie should have been a home run because it was bright, it was colorful, and it appealed to children, especially with Crypto the dog. Let me tell you something, it's hard to make me hate a dog in a movie because I love dogs, but Crypto was just annoying. And don't even get me started on the Supergirl cameo at the end. Talk about not getting people excited for Supergirl the movie next year. Or should we say Alcoholic Girl. But James Gunn has talked about how he's had this grand plan for DC moving forward for the next 8 to 10 years. He's talked about how all these movies, Peacemaker, The Authority, Clayface, Batman and all of them, it's going to lead to this big event in about 8 to 10 years time. And already that plan is falling apart. It's falling apart. It's clear at this point that he does not know what he's doing, that he's changing things as he goes. His plan was to have Superman, and then Batman, and then there was supposed to be a Wonder Woman movie, then Paradise Lost, and then a Green Lantern movie, and then there was The Authority. They're sort of like the boys of the DC universe, a dark Justice League. And he even had one of them in his Superman movie, The Engineer, but already that plan has fallen apart. The Authority is not going to be made. So already in your first movie of the DC universe, you have this important character called the Engineer, who is supposed to be part of the Authority. At the time of this recording, the Authority movie is not going to be made. They can't get a script right. And next thing on the list is Peacemaker Season 2, which doesn't make sense. This is supposed to be a new DC universe, but Peacemaker Season 2 is a sequel to Peacemaker Season 1, which was part of Zack Snyder's DC Extended Universe. So again, it doesn't make sense. And this isn't entirely James Gunn's fault, but he can't use Batman. Imagine starting a DC universe but not being able to use Batman, because Warner Brothers are contractually obliged to do a sequel to Matt Reeves' The Batman, which came out in 2022, which is not connected to any extended universe. It was his own thing. I have to think that James Gunn wishes that movie had been cancelled, but he can't cancel it. He may be the head of DC Studios, but as I said, they are contractually obliged to do that sequel. And they can't have multiple Batmans running around. It's not like in the same calendar year they can have the Batman Part 2 and whatever James Gunn's Batman is going to be. So they have to hold off on having Batman in this new DC connected universe. They really have to get the Batman Part 2 out of the way, which has been delayed. I mean, that movie really should have come out this year at the very latest, but it's still 2 years away. So in that sense, James Gunn has really got a problem on his hands regarding Batman. So before getting a Batman movie in the new DC universe, we're getting Clayface instead. Clayface, a bottom tier Batman villain. Now there is a precedent for Batman adjacent films to do well, because The Joker, which came out in 2019, that was $1 billion movie. And the Penguin TV series was very good. But Clayface? Really? You're doing a Clayface movie before Batman. You're doing a Clayface movie before Wonder Woman. James Gunn's DC universe is a mess. It's gotten off to a terrible start with Superman. And this is another mistake he's making. This is a mistake that he hasn't learned from what Marvel are doing. Because a big criticism of Marvel over the last 2 years is that it's become like homework. You feel like you have to watch every single movie and TV show to understand the movie that you're watching. And James Gunn seems obsessed with making sure everything is connected. Part of the reason why he says Superman came out in digital so quickly is because Peacemaker Season 2 is very important to the DC universe going forward. Now, as if it wasn't bad enough that you have to see a TV show to understand the movies going forward, but you're advertising this to the young people, to the kids who watch Superman, to go watch an adult-rated show featuring graphic sex and violence. Now, if that was a standalone show, that would be fine, but it just goes to show how weird James Gunn is. Just look up those old tweets that he made. Let's say, for example, that there are kids who enjoyed the new Superman movie, which I'm sure there was. But imagine being told that, oh, you have to watch this adult-rated show to understand what's coming next. That's a real dilemma for parents. Almost as much as a dilemma for those parents who took their kids to see the new Superman movie. I'd love to know how they explain to their kids what a harem is. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, it just goes to show a lack of complete and utter understanding on James Gunn's part. And these weird fetishes he has. And I've already said I like him as a filmmaker when he sticks to his own niche. I mean, for example, the Justice Gang that was in his Superman movie, I actually thought they were quite good. And if he had made a movie just about them, that would have been great. But no, he knows his comic books, but making him the head of DC Studios is a terrible, terrible idea. He just doesn't understand these characters. His mind doesn't understand heroic characters. I mean, where's Green Arrow? Where's Batman? Where's Wonder Woman? He should have all these things lined up. He's had 3 or 4 years now to get all his ducks in a row, so to speak. Now, in fairness, he has made a promise that he would not move forward in a movie unless they get a script locked down. Now, if you know anything about the Marvel movies that are being made these days, they often make movies on the go. They often film movies without a completed script. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just look at Captain America: Brave New World. They made that movie 3 times over. The point I'm trying to make is that James Gunn doesn't know what he's doing. And the whole cinematic universe bubble, I think, has burst. I just think people just want good movies. Good standalone movies. Let's imagine a universe where Warner Brothers had put me in charge. I would be able to read the room. I'd say, guys, look, let's just focus on making good movies. It doesn't mean that you can't have a connected DC universe, but you can make them lightly connected. You can do a Superman story there, a Batman story there, a Green Lantern story there, a Flash story there. And in a few years' time, when things are going well, by all means, have the team-up movie. So in my opinion, James Gunn's DC universe has gotten off to a terrible start. Superman was awful. It made less money than Man of Steel. Peacemaker Season 2 so far has been terrible. And from the looks of it, this Supergirl movie is going to be terrible, based on her cameo at the end of Superman. What have we got to look forward to then? A Clayface movie. I think in a few years' time, we're going to see the law of diminishing returns and his DC universe is going to fall apart. Not unless they make drastic changes that are effective. And I have to say, another thing is James Gunn's political leanings are really creeping in their way into his work. Now, as I said, he's a very talented filmmaker, but another main problem with the Superman movie that he made is that he threw himself into the marketing. He was all over the marketing. He was putting himself front and center. He spends way too much time on social media defending his decisions and flat out lying. Now, if Superman was such a runaway success, why was it put on streaming about 35 days after coming out of the cinema? So bottom line is, James Gunn's DC universe is a mess. Warner Brothers should, in my opinion, have stuck with Zack Snyder, let him do his thing. It at least would have been different from the Marvel universe. You've got a schedule which is already falling apart. You've got audience apathy. Superman was so bad that I have no interest in DC moving forward. And that's so disappointing as a fan of DC. So what do you think? Did you like Superman? Do you think James Gunn's DC universe is falling apart already? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Share this video out there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.